Today we are going to study about the operations with the complex numbers. So the first thing basically you must know that what are the complex numbers. Now the complex numbers are the numbers which consist of the real part and the imaginary part. You know, all the numbers that exist in this world and that you know, like the whole numbers, rational numbers, irrational numbers, natural numbers, integers, they all are the real part of the numbers or real numbers. But there are some calculations where the mathematicians is stuck, so they think that they consider them as an imaginary numbers. Let's suppose square root of any negative number, for example negative 9, is not possible, right? If even you will write sorry, if even you will write in the calculator, you will get a math error, right? Math error you will get. So in that case, they have thought that if they can think another imaginary number like square root of negative 1, and they represented that this value is equals to I. So this came in their imagination, so that's why they call it as the imaginary number, to solve certain numbers which cannot be found, which gives you the math error. So you can see the mathematicians, they do any kind of the calculation by imagining any kind of the number. So if this says that the square root of negative 1 is an imaginary number and is represented by I, so I square will have a value of negative 1. So this is what imaginary numbers values are. And when when they are written together, real number and the imaginary number, then they are said to be complex numbers. Let's identify the real part of the complex number, imaginary part of the complex numbers. So for example, as we already know that a plus bi is a way to represent a complex number, always you have to write the real part and then you have to write the imaginary part. Now for example, 16 plus 2i. So where is the real number? Real number is 16. Okay, 16 is my real number, whereas 2i is my imaginary number. Now if I ask you and I give you only 16, so you can see there is no I, so 16 is a real number. Now my question is, what is the imaginary number of this part? So of course I is not written, so it means 0i. So the imaginary part of this number will be 0. Similarly, if I ask you minus 18i, for example, and I ask you what is the real part of this number? If we suppose that this is the complex number, so what is the real part? So in order to write a complex number, we should write first the real number and then the imaginary number. Now, imaginary number is mentioned as 18i. So, what is the real part? Of course, it is 0. Now, for example, if I have 17, okay, so I want to know that what is the imaginary part of this number. So, here there is no part, right? No imaginary number. So, definitely it would be 0i. Because 0 times I will gives us 0. So the real part will be 17 and the imaginary part will be 0i. So I hope that this part is clear to you. Let's move to other part. Okay, so now the conjugate of complex numbers. Now, conjugate of the complex numbers are other complex numbers, another kind of the complex number, which consist of the exact same real part. Means if I have 1 plus 2i, so you can see that 1 is the real part, okay, 1 is the real part, whereas the 2i is my imaginary part. Now, if I want to take the conjugate, then the real part is stay as it is, whereas the sign of the imaginary part will be changed, and then you write the same imaginary number. So conjugate numbers are actually the reverse sign or opposite signs of the imaginary numbers. Now, if you want to find out, you want to represent the complex numbers or the conjugates of the complex number on the graph, then you must know that the x-axis represents the real numbers. So on the right hand side, they are the positive real numbers. On the negative side, it is the negative real number. Whereas the y-axis represents the imaginary numbers. Okay, imaginary numbers. So on the top, it is they are the positive imaginary numbers, whereas at the bottom, they are the negative imaginary numbers. Now, for example, I have a coordinate 2 and 3i. So, for example, 2 plus 3i. So, in this one, the real part is 2 and 3i is the imaginary part. So, let's make or draw it. Okay, so here is my 2. If I go and here is my 3i, so this is my point. Now you can see that 2 plus 3i is in the quadrant 1. Because if we move anti-clockwise, we have to move in coordinate plane as an anti-clockwise. So it is the first quadrant, then over here the second quadrant, then the third quadrant, and then the fourth quadrant. So let's suppose if I want to write negative 2, positive 3i. So negative 2 is here and positive 3i here. So this lies in the second quadrant. Now if I have negative 2 and negative 3i, okay, so here is the negative 2 and down is the negative 3i, then it lies in the third quadrant. Now, since in last it's 2 negative 3i, so here is my 2 and negative 3i is at the bottom, so this lie in my fourth quadrant. If I ask you, let's 5 plus 6i, okay, negative 5 plus 6i. Can you tell me what is the quadrant of this complex number, and also find the quadrant of the conjugate of the same complex number. So first of all, let's find out what is the quadrant of this complex number. So minus 5 is here and 6i is somewhere on the top. So minus 5 plus 6i lies in the third quadrant. Now they are asking you to write the conjugate and then identify the quadrant of that conjugate. So real part is stay same. So negative 5 is stay the same. Imaginary parts number change. Imaginary parts sign change. That means positive change into negative and then 6i. So negative 5, negative 6i somewhere lie in the third quadrant. I hope that this part is clear to you. Question says identify the real and imaginary parts of the given numbers. Then classify the number as real, imaginary or complex. So any number consists of the real part plus imaginary part will be termed as complex number. Right? Will be termed as complex number. Any number without the I will be a real number. Any number with the I would be an imaginary number. Now here 6 plus I, of course it is the complex number because it consists of the real and the imaginary part. I square root of 17, of course it is the only imaginary number, and in order to make it as a complex number, you have to write 0 plus I square root of 17. But in fact, without the real part, it is said to be an imaginary number. 8 minus 2i, it consists of the real part as well as the imaginary part. So, of course, it is the complex number. Square root of 43, it doesn't have any I part or imaginary part. That's why it is the real number. In order to write it as a complex number, we can add a 0i, that means imaginary number. But in fact, there is no imaginary number. It contains only a real number. Number root 13, it is the real number. 20i, it's an imaginary number. Now our exercise starts. Add, subtract, multiply, divide the complex numbers. Now remember one thing, that if you want to add the complex number, okay, so it means the complex number a plus bi. So remember, you can add or subtract the complex number in a way that real part will be added only with the real part and imaginary number will be added or subtracted by the imaginary number only. So let's suppose 2 plus 3i and you want to add it by 4 minus 6i. So remember that 2 is the real number of this of this complex number and 4 is the real part of the other complex number. So 2 and 4 will be added together only. So 2 plus 4, it will give us 6. Now imaginary part will be added by the imaginary part. So 3i will be added only by negative 6i. Okay, so we can write here 3i plus minus 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 6i and you can subtract them and you will get negative 3i. So the most important thing is that the real part will be added or subtracted with the real part. Imaginary will be added or subtracted by the imaginary numbers only. Now in the multiplication, the most important thing is that I times I gives you I square. Why? Because they are the same basis. It means that the powers should be added together. So I has one power, the other I has one power. When you multiply them, you will get I square, and I square has a value negative 1. Now one more important thing, that you can use your calculators also directly if such kind of the question comes in the multiple choice. So in order to use the scientific calculator, you will press mode and then 2. On the 2, you will see that complex is written. Okay, so mode 2. When you will go on the mode 2, it will stay on the mode 2. Now on the screen, in order to write the I, you have to press English, E-N-G only. Okay, so if you want to write any complex number and you want to write the I, so for I you have to press English. Okay, so practice the calculator's operation and I will tell you how to add, subtract, multiply or divide by the mental method. So here is a question. You can see that there is a complex number 4 plus 6i and another complex number 7 plus 3i. There is a positive sign in between them. So the first part you write as it is without the bracket. When you open the bracket by distributive property, anything, any number multiplied by the plus will gives you the same sign. Okay, now write the real part together. It means 4 and before the 7 there is a plus sign. So you write here 4 plus 7. Now write the imaginary part. Now the imaginary part is plus 6i and plus 3i. Just write them together, plus 6i plus 3i. Add them, 4 plus 7, it will gives us 11. Plus 6i plus 3i gives us 9i. Now you want to check your working. Check your working, go to the calculator. In the calculator, press the mode, complex, and then write this. As you see, just write in the calculator. It will give you the same answer. Now next question, 5 minus 2i plus 2 minus I. The first thing is open by the positive sign, which means no need to write the brackets, just write them as it is. Now real part, write with the real part, so 5 plus 2 write together. Imaginary part, write together, so minus 2i minus I. Now write 5 plus 2 gives you 7, minus 2 minus I gives you minus 3i. Remember, any variable written before the variable, there is no number. It's automatically understood that 1 is written before it. That's why before the I, we said that there is 1. Next question, to first open the bracket. So we will write minus 2 plus 3i. Open the bracket. Opening the bracket with the plus sign means write as it is. Now write the real part, so we will write minus 2 plus 5 together. Write the imaginary part, so we will write plus 3i minus 4i. We are not multiplying, remember, only direct addition or subtraction. Minus 2 plus 5 gives us 3. Plus 3i minus 4i gives us minus I or minus 1i. We don't write the 1 before any variable. Next question, write them, open them without doing anything. Whenever there is a plus and inside minus is written, so you prefer to write minus. The reason is plus minus gives you minus. So minus 1 and minus 9i, write the real part with the real part and the imaginary part with the imaginary part. When you write the imaginary part, don't always write the sign which is before the imaginary part, not after. 7 minus 1, 6. Minus 4 minus 9i gives us minus 13i. And this is how we perform the addition on the complex numbers. Let's practice few more questions about the subtraction. Now before subtraction, you must remember that plus times plus gives us plus. Plus times minus or minus times plus always gives us minus sign. Minus times minus gives us plus sign. What is the most important thing? That when you multiply the minus with anything, minus multiply with the positive, it gives us the minus sign, means the opposite of plus and opposite of this sign. Okay, now if I do minus times minus, minus times minus, it gives me the opposite sign of this minus, that is plus. Okay, let's start. Open the brackets first. The first bracket has no sign before it, so you just write as it is. Now before the second bracket, there is a negative sign. So open the bracket with the negative sign. Negative positive gives us negative, and minus plus also gives us minus 4i. Now the rest of the operation or rest of the working should be same. Means write the real part as together and the imaginary part together. Add them or subtract them accordingly. 2 minus 5 gives us negative 3. Plus 3i minus 4i gives us negative I. So the basically in subtraction, only the one first step is different, that is the art of opening a bracket. First bracket stay the same. First bracket stay the same. Now second bracket, open it by minus sign. So minus plus minus 8 and minus minus plus 2i. After this, we write the real numbers together and imaginary numbers together. Add them. 6 minus 8 gives you minus 2. Minus I means minus 1i, right? So minus 1i plus 2i gives us plus I. And you can check your work by using the scientific calculator. Open the bracket. Minus 7 minus 4i minus minus plus 9 and minus minus plus 3i. Write the real parts together and imaginary parts together. So minus 7 plus 9 plus 2 minus 4i plus 3i gives us minus I. Check your calculation. Now open the bracket. Last question about the subtraction. Minus plus minus 3 minus minus plus 5i. Write the real part together and imaginary parts together. 10 minus 3 is 7 minus I plus 5i gives us plus 4i. We will study multiplication and division in the next video.